All right, everybody, good evening. So I'm just going to take a little bit of a stall as I'm sure Chris is going to make his way into the background at some point. But one thing that I wanted to open up with before I start moving over to Amazon and kind of predicting what it's going to look like ahead of tomorrow is I had a good conversation really late night last night with Carlos from Finance Junkies. And so I just wanted to pull it up and kind of go through some of what I was chit-chatting about. I think we had a good conversation overall. And so I wanted to kind of start at the beginning of that and go into it because he kind of initially poked me about it, looking at specifically. Um, Sorry, I get a little bit of a streamception. Let me just double check. There's nothing crazy on the screen that I could get in trouble with. Nope. So going into what Carlos had tagged me, and he talked to me about the lithium venture that Exxon is potentially going to do. And basically, it's very similar. If you don't know much about lithium at the moment, it's mostly focused on there's multiple ways, right? You could get it out of rocks and kind of mine it that way, which is very labor intensive, or you could drill for it and it's in basically aquifer water. It's just in a brine that, just like oil and gas is, right? You drill into the earth and you find rocks that contain brine. And with that brine, it might have a certain amount of uh, of lithium associated with it, and basically just process that and strip the lithium out. So we got started talking a little bit about it, and basically I was like, well, Exxon's not a bad idea. They know to develop big projects, with evidence being in Guyana and the Permian. If you're not very familiar with those, are very large multi-million barrel a day fields, or going to be multi-million barrel a day fields. And so Exxon knows about that in the Permian, and they're building one in Guyana at the moment. And all that most lithium projects are, as I kind of alluded to earlier, are brine-based projects that are set up in the processing facilities, some pipelines, and there you have it. Give me 1 second. I forgot to send Chris the link, so that is why he's not on, because I messed up. So sending him the link really quick. And so then let me present again. I used to have a constant link, so it was never really a problem. But now it's something where I always have to go back and forth. So going to what Carlos is saying, he's like, yeah, he agrees. Kind of a great idea, would lead to decades of prosperity for both lithium and many other companies that they're able to partner with. I think they talked about partnering with Albemarle and many other companies as well with this. And it could be a continuing a narrative around legacy and green energy in either option. Let me just see if Hot Chris is on. He's back here. What's going on, Hot Chris? Sorry for that. That was my fault. And then basically it was just talking about, I was getting into, it's not an or conversation, right? It's not like, do you choose oil and gas or renewables, right? It's a kind of a both sort of discussion. And I've talked about this in previous streams, and, Chris and I talked about it last week with respect to the oil and gas stream, where it's like these infrastructure and takes decades to set up. And so, in order to be able to use that, you kind of have to make sure that you have the right plans in place, you have the capital in place, and it's going to literally take years. And that wasn't trying to like poo-poo what Carlos was kind of saying. It was just like a reiteration that a lot of these companies are going to be around for quite some time. And even if they might not be westernized focused, there's still a lot of countries in the developing worlds that aren't ready for solar and wind as of yet, because they still need to get their oil and gas infrastructure to a place where they can get that renewable sort of structure in. But another thing I wanted to kind of allude to, which I don't think people are really talking about yet, but I think it's going to be something that's huge in the second half of the decade. And I know Toyota is really big into it. And I think Tesla might also be making a car for this, but I guess we'll find out in a year or two if that's the case. I know Elon has kind of said he's not going to. And Chris, if I say something you want to jump in, just let me know, but I'm just going to keep running with it. But for industrial use specifically, planes, trucking, heavy equipment, they're all going to move to hydrogen. And there's been a lot of chat of that. Europe is moving that way. They have H2T side and many other projects that are kind of undergoing and being sanctioned at the moment. And then you also have Australia, which is going that way as well. And I anticipate you'll start to see more and more of this in the United States, because I feel like Europe is a little bit ahead of us in the renewable push towards, in the government push towards the 2015 Paris Agreement than we are. Chris, anything to add before I, kind of continue on?
No, I mean, when it comes to hydrogen, hydrogen has some big benefits that we may not necessarily just see right away. Um, One of them being that it's a good place. It's a good energy dense but yet clean burning renewable. So basically, to get hydrogen, all you really have to do is just take water, like just regular distilled water, and run electrical current through it, and mount the energy goes in and splits the molecule into its two core components, one which is oxygen, another one which is hydrogen. You capture the hydrogen and then utilize that in a fuel cell, or you can burn it, but burning in a combustion engine is really dumb because hydrogen is notoriously flammable. So instead you would use a fuel cell to basically pass the electron from one hydrogen to the other side, and basically that generates electrical current. So it's actually a technology that's relatively clean. It's actually very clean. The problem that you run into with hydrogen is that the amount of electricity required to split that molecule into its core components of hydrogen and oxygen are kind of excessive. So from a purely like you know energy energy standpoint, like cost perspective, there's a lot of waste. So a lot of hydrogen is actually not really green hydrogen. It's actually pretty dirty hydrogen. What I mean by that is the electricity required to generate the hydrogen is actually coming from not so great places. So right there, you can see some of it's of course going to be coming from nuclear, which is technically green, because it's carbon neutral. I guess that's something green if you want to consider it. But a lot of it is from natural gas. So where natural gas, is being utilized to generate the hydrogen. And if we're trying to move away from fossil fuels, and people are thinking that hydrogen is the way to do it, like unfortunately no, all you're really doing is just moving it from one energy source to another. And at that point it's just purely like theatrics. I think my biggest positive with hydrogen would be around using renewable sources at the point of contact, and then somehow generating hydrogen there and probably using it for infrastructure. But I don't know. I don't see hydrogen as a very promising field, considering the battery developments where energy density in batteries are growing much faster. So instead of focusing on hydrogen, people should be just focusing on improving battery tech and basically charging and coming up with that. But there are some cases where hydrogen does make more sense, like airplanes. Like long haul airplanes, hydrogen could actually be a good replacement compared to regular jet fuel. Maybe even on ships. There was a ship. Uh, there's something called a hydrogen challenger. You ever heard of that before, Matt? Do you know what the hydrogen challenger was?
I don't know what the hydrogen challenger is, but I know that the hydrogen ships that are running right now.
There. So basically, this was a ship that they did about 20 years ago. I mean, not 20,
Well,
like 15 years ago. I was tracking it for the longest time. But basically what it did was they would take a giant wind turbine, not the ones with the blades, but one with the I forgot what the term for it is. But basically they would use that to generate electricity and take the
mm,
seawater, turn the electricity into use electrolysis from the electricity generated by the wind turbine, turn it into hydrogen, and the hydrogen would then be used on
mm.
the ship to power the ship, which is kind of crazy, right? So that means like you have an infinitely renewable source of energy to move ships around.
Hmm.
So it's a pretty cool concept. I don't know if anything happened to it, but it was a very
That's
interesting.
interesting.
It's a very interesting proposition because there's a lot of wind when you're in, when you're at ocean and stuff. When you're in the ocean, it doesn't take a lot of energy to propel you. So I figured that while ships are, in a stationary position, if they're generating electricity, that can then be converted into a hydrogen source and utilized for transportation. It's almost like using a sail, but instead of capturing the sail in canvas, you're capturing it in an energy format and then putting it forward. So it's a very interesting thing.
I do have a question for you because Toyota is very different than a lot of the other car companies, right? So they were the first to kind of move towards a hybrid, right? The Prius was very successful in the early 2000s, but they're lagging behind when it comes to making an EV, and they have focused on like their Mirage or Mirai, which is their hydrogen vehicle. Why do you think that they focused on a hydrogen vehicle rather than an EV? And the reason I ask this is because the Japanese are very much more longer wavelength thinking than the majority of the world. They think on, 30-year, 20-year time horizons rather than quarter by quarter like we do here in America, right? So I'm just kind of curious if you have any thoughts as to why that might be.
Mm, I've
It's
asked that.
okay if you haven't put thought into it.
No, I have actually thought about it a couple of times, and I'm the only conclusion that keeps coming to mind is just sunken cost fallacy, where they've already committed so much money into developing the technology that now they're almost like, they're just like doubling down on it constantly. The only places where I've seen any infrastructure that's built around hydrogen in the United States, as far as I know, is California. I could be wrong on that, but the last time I checked,
It's the only
it
place
was
I've seen.
only,
Yeah.
huh?
It's the only
Yeah.
place I've
So
seen so far.
and a lot of the reasoning behind it was that it was actually government sponsored, or government regulated kind of thing, where you automakers had to have something that met emission standards, right? So basically, it was like an offset from their gas guzzling cars, so they had to come up with clean technology, and Toyota went the route of, hydrogen. But I don't know if they've actually put any real thought into it beyond that, and I'm curious to see how the United States could adopt hydrogen for something like long haul trucking, and even that, I would question how effective it could be because of just the sheer amount of infrastructure cost that would be required just to get the program running. Whereas electricity, it's pretty much just hooking up chargers everywhere, which is not that hard, and there's electrical grids everywhere. Like, imagine right now you wanted to do a hydrogen fueling network around the country. The
Right.
total cost of that would be astronomical compared to just a system that's developed like Tesla, where they just have pre-built charging stations built in a factory that they just drop into locations, hook it up to the grid, and there you go. Now you've got a charging station. There
Mhm.
are definitely some use cases. Someone said trains. That could be a use case. That could be
The
a good
the
use
the
case.
argument against though, which the Tesla Semi is testing, right, is
Mhm,
the weight of the batteries that you have to carry along with the trucks themselves, right? And
mhm,
I haven't seen any of the case studies, or sorry, not case studies, the wrong term to use. I haven't seen any of the positive or negatives coming out of Pepsi, because I know Pepsi was one of the few that got the Tesla Semi very early on. And I'm a shareholder in Pepsi, so I've always been curious about how they're liking that vehicle. But it's limited to like 500 miles, which, if you get 500 miles and then you have to then recharge again, I know it's pretty difficult to charge that large of a battery. uh, I get what you're saying with respect to electricity is everywhere, but is there going to be a large difference? And I know they're working also on solid state batteries and stuff like that. And I don't necessarily want to make it a conversation about EVs, but I was just kind of curious because it all relates back to the lithium part that we were kind of talking about with Exxon and them investing heavy and doubling down into that sort of space. And they're also doubling into the carbon sequestration space as well. Um, but anyway, I was kind of curious if that was the reason why hydrogen is kind of coming forward.
Well, I mean, it's risky, right? Where one of the things that I'm seeing all the time in terms of like headlines is just battery manufacturers keep making breakthroughs in both battery weight reduction, and energy density.
Mhm.
So when it comes down to it, you know, do you try to build out infrastructure that will become obsolete within a short period of time, that can be innovated into, that could be innovated by battery manufacturers? So like it's really a it's a really a hard decision to make for most people. And also the charging infrastructure is getting relatively better too, where now you're actually able to charge those trucks at a much faster pace. I think the mega chargers or something like that can actually charge up to a pretty significant amount in a very short period of time. So even from a trucking standpoint, do you know any truckers that are going to be able to do like 400, 500 miles sitting in one position straight? I'm pretty sure that they're mandated to take breaks and stuff like that. So during that break period, they could charge the truck again and everything else. So I think the infrastructure for trucking is going to take a lot longer to develop. Um,
Mhm.
500 miles is about a day drive. Truckers are limited on how many hours. Yeah. So I would say this is one of those things that's just going to be a cat and mouse game, where you're going to have what is that thing called? You're going to have the industry moving in a direction, and each person is going to have to figure out, or each company is going to have to figure out which route they want to go. Do they want to invest in a hydrogen fleet that the infrastructure is not really built for right now? So, or do they want to go the EV route where the infrastructure is not there, but the likelihood of it getting built out is probably way more plausible than the other way? Or, which is what I think most trucking companies are probably going to end up doing, is waiting to see who comes out on top, and instead just run their rigs just the way they work right now. Like I don't see any demand drop in terms of like regular trucks right now, whether you go for Mac or you go for any of these other major ones. There's already huge infrastructure that's already built out that supports the truckers. Whether you go to these what do you call it, fueling stations. Have you ever been to a fueling station that's specifically built for truckers? Like, they have amazing facilities. Like, they have showers there. They've got like
Oh, okay. I
food.
thought I thought you meant like the
Yeah,
pumps themselves. I've never,
yeah.
no, not well, not
No,
one specifically for truckers. No,
yeah, no. There's a ton of them around. There's actually a
I've seen
really
some of them on YouTube, and yeah,
yeah,
they show the shower videos and stuff like that. Not of
yeah,
them showering, but the facilities. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
No, it's a very interesting field, because I had no idea that this was a thing. One time I was moving. My family was moving from New York. Like my parents were moving from New York to Savannah, Georgia, and like last minute something happened, and I had to rent one of those Penske trucks to like help move everything. And so I spoke to one of my friends who's a trucker, and I said, "Hey man, look, I'm gonna have to rent this fucking giant truck. I'm gonna move from New York all the way to Savannah. Do you have any tips for me? Like, what should I do? Because I've never driven like a 25-foot truck before. It was still, I was still legal. I didn't have to get like a trucking license to do it, but it was a pretty big truck." He said there's only two things. One, get something called truck maps. So it's like this Google version of not I mean it's a trucking version of Google Maps. But what's cool is that you put in your truck size and your truck dimensions, and it won't put you on roads that have like the overbridge, because that was one of my main concerns. Like, what if I go on a road and the freaking like underbridge is gonna end up like, causing the thing to crash? We've all seen those YouTube videos, right?
Hmm.
So the app actually like navigates you away from anything that you can't get around, and it was a very interesting thing. But that's when I learned, like, truckers, they have like tons of truck stops that are specifically dedicated for just trucking.
Hmm.
And people, and then also like people sleep in their cabs. I didn't know that. Like, that was a thing. Like, people overnight, I thought people just stayed at a hotel or something, but that's not the case. People actually sleep in their trucks overnight. And
Hmm.
so there's gas stations, some of them that are specifically built for truckers, also have like shower facilities and everything. And it's actually a really cool thing. Not I don't know if a lot of people actually know about how the
The
trucking
industry, yeah.
industry works, but
It's
it's very cool.
it's
Yeah.
a very I appreciate those guys, man, because I see them all the time on the road, and I feel like they
Yeah.
get a bad rap, and it makes me definitely think. It's just like, well, they're always like, people are like, why is this thing going so slow in traffic? And it's like, you realize how much time it takes them to speed
Mm.
up and slow down and all that crap. But anyway, I'm curious. I don't know what you guys covered on FJ today, so I apologize if I'm repeating anything. But it was interesting to
So,
see PayPal drop after
someone
hours.
said travel centers. Yes, that the company that I was looking at to invest in was called Travel Centers of America. Actually, that was the. Let me just look it up. I think they got bought out actually by somebody.
Yeah,
but yeah, we spoke a little bit about PayPal today.
some undisclosed,
Loves
some
loves
undisclosed
and
oil
loves.
company, I think, bought
Yeah.
travel centers.
Yeah. Okay. So we spoke very briefly
Yeah,
about PayPal dropping, and some of it was because they had some margin compression. They were actually free cash flow negative because of
really.
some of because of some they had a sale on some of their BNPL loans, so they had to
Got
record
it.
it, and supposedly, like, that was a small thing. So it's overall the business, in my opinion, was okay. It's not like it's not bad, but it wasn't like that great either.
I think it made like a
They're
dollar 17 or dollar 18 per share for the
Yeah,
quarter.
yeah. They're still profitable, they're still growing. It's just they're not growing that much. The other thing is, like, I think it's just general market pessimism that's really bled into these guys. And it's not just them. There's a lot of companies that this happened to, believe it or not. So
Hmm.
I'd say PayPal is definitely on the not so hot list of companies that the market is willing to participate in. I mean, a lot of people are saying the growth story for Robin. I mean, not Robinhood. The growth story
Right.
for PayPal is over. And so a lot of people are valuing it based on that, and a lot of people are selling it off. But I think if you're willing to just let the thesis play out, I think PayPal is a good play over the long run. They're still generating $5 billion. They guided higher for free cash flow, so they can use that free cash flow to buy back shares, which
Mhm.
means the EPS will grow. I think their PE next year, forward PE, is actually um relatively really low, actually,
Well,
considering
I was
considering the
thinking
value they provide.
if you just multiply out that 1.16 by four, I mean, you're getting close to $4.60, $4.70. And so knowing that the stock price is below 70, I mean, you're looking at something in the realm of a 15 price to earnings, right? It's in between
Mm,
15 and 20, which for a company that is kind of unique and it's kind of doesn't have, I mean, it does have some competition. It makes you kind of think, right? So I know a lot of people got into it. I think I'm personally going to do a little bit of look at it, and then I start
mhm,
thinking, I'm like, well, for my companies that I like to invest in, I'm like, I don't see the trajectory for PayPal, right? But
mm,
I'm like, is that an opportunity for, say, a 18-month hold if I buy a leap or something like that, if I find the right price? And so now
mm.
that the price is kind of compressed a little bit and it's back to where, people were kind of buying it a month or two ago, it makes it a little bit, it's still off bottom, right? I think the bottom was like 63. So I think it's still at
Yeah.
67. So,
Yep.
but it gets me within, 10% of where people were buying off bottom. So if you time it
Yeah.
appropriately, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely value in the company. It's just that the thesis is going to take longer to play out. There's still a lot of uncertainty around, the CEO thing too, weighing heavy on them. They need a lot. What they need is stability. Basically, they need to identify who's going to take over for Dan Schulman sooner rather than later. Even if Dan Schulman ends up staying longer, who gives a shit? But just
Mm.
they need clear guidance on what's going to happen, and that's I think that's true for a lot of other companies. Robinhood just had a terrible monthly active user number. I think a lot of people were expecting, with all
Really?
the meme stock crazes that's going on, yeah, that their monthly active users would have
They were
jumped,
profitable
but they
though, at
didn't.
least from what it says
Yes,
here.
yes. Yeah, they were profitable, but I don't think that that's enough right now for the market. The market is definitely um, trying to see where Robinhood's future growth is going to come from. There's also legislation on its way regarding payment for order flow. So if payment for order flow gets cut,
Mm,
companies like Virtu and Citadel will supposedly take a hit. But then the question is, will Robinhood still be able to offer like the commission free trading and everything else? So, it's a very curious business um, that Robinhood is in right now, and there could be some headwinds coming its way. I'm not personally invested in Robinhood, but I do see the value in it. They've got a pretty large cash position as well, so there is an inbuilt margin of safety. I know some other people are very like interested in Robinhood, but I'm like it doesn't like it's not in my wheelhouse right now.
yeah, yeah. I need to watch it play out a little bit more before I really get after it. I am curious though. Your thoughts? I know you've talked about it in the past, but Amazon earnings come out tomorrow, unless I'm stupid and it came out today, but I'm pretty sure I knew it was coming out tomorrow. Thoughts on it? I know I have shares. I think you have a pretty large position as well.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are. And are your thoughts more for you think this is going to be a good quarter pop? Do you not care? You're looking, 3, 4 years down the road and seeing the same trends that I'm doing. I personally don't, I'll show my cards. I personally don't give a crap about the earnings show tomorrow, as long as kind of the revenue continues to go up in the right direction. I'm more of an idealist of I fully anticipate that when Amazon is good and ready, they'll turn on the margin and get the e-commerce margin up to where they want. And they're right now just focusing on a Walmart strategy, which is charge low margin, if not negative margin, to get access into everybody's home. And then eventually they'll turn on the drip. And when they turn on the drip, baby, it's going to be absolutely insane. But anyway, that's my thoughts, and I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I'm in agreement with that. I think Amazon has been growing their secondary businesses outside of just the AWS and the e-commerce business beyond what a lot of people are expecting. And I think that's going to be a very, very good indicator for where we're going. There's been a lot of, capex cuts by Andy Jassy. Andy Jassy's taken a more active role in trying to mitigate some of the costs that they've resulted. Like as an example, they did $1 billion worth of spend to do, I think, an 8-part series on Lord of the Rings.
Mm,
While I like Lord of the Rings, I don't know if spending $1 billion on a content is actually worth it. So, when you think about it, you gotta like, and I'm glad that all the what I really like about Amazon's like presentations, they're very simple. Some people like overly complicate their earnings presentations, but Amazon does a really good job of just putting it out there. So if you go back like backwards, let's go like right here, long-term goal. You can see right there. Everything is all about efficiency, 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 optimize free cash flow. That's the long-term goal. So I
yeah.
would say if you have a long-term vision, like if you plan on holding Amazon for a good period of time, tomorrow's earnings, you're absolutely right, is pretty irrelevant. They've got advertising revenue that's high margin that's on its way, that's going to be factored in. And I'm sure that it's in there somewhere if you want
It's
to
not. I
take a
think
look.
you have to go into the actual like 10K and stuff like that, which we could pull that up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think
I,
the thing that I want to highlight specifically is like the trailing 12 months. So this is last quarter, right? So this is hopefully
mhm.
going to look a lot better. But even in the trailing 12 months, they had $524 billion in revenue, and so this looks, I guess, from really Q2, Q3, Q4, and now all of Q1 of 2023. So that going forward, I mean, I know they always kind of forecast this, but I anticipate, they're going to probably hit because what did they end up with revenue? They have it in here somewhere. So they had in Q1 127 billion. And Q1, generally speaking, is one of their lower quarters, and it kind of accelerates just normally throughout the year. So if they're able to annualize this at 127, I'm anticipating they're going to get close to 550, if not 575 billion in revenue this year. Um, because I feel like things have kind of kickstarted back again, and growth is, in my opinion, sort of kickstarted again, coupled with cloud's not slowing down. I think we could pull that up and you'll see how wild cloud
Mhm.
is going. But that's where I see the value. In 2 to 3 years, they're going to be making $750 billion a year. And you might laugh at that. Some people might laugh, but I think they grew their revenue like 40% from like 20, like it was over 2 years from 2020 and 2021, which is why I don't actually care about the Q2 or Q1 2022 to 2023, because you think about how much people were shopping from home in 2020 and 2021, and the fact that the revenue hasn't declined because people are going back to work, they're shopping back in normal brick and mortar. The fact that revenue is continuing to go up, even at a single digit pace, after coming off of that massive 40% year over year or 30% year over year growth that we saw, is demonstrating the massive moat that this company has. And I think people might be like, oh, but growth is slowing down. It's like, it has to go back to the mean, my guy. Like, if you, a good slide, and maybe I'm talking too much, but a good slide, I'll pull it up, is with respect to total American e-commerce percentage or something like that.
Yeah, can
And
you share my screen real quick? Because I
yeah,
think
maybe you have it.
this one's also a good highlight. Can you see this? So basically, this is like digital ad spend. So one of the things is if you look at digital ad spend for Google, Facebook, they've always been relatively high. So like Google has been 31.6% of total digital ad spending. They've actually gone down to 26.4. Um, when you look at this, doesn't mean that Google is going bankrupt by any means and they're losing their ads business. That's not what it means. The pie is growing every year. It's just Google's share of that pie is decreasing, and Meta, which is Facebook, is also kind of in that same trajectory where things are more stabilizing. But if you look at Amazon from 2019 to 2023, it's doubled, right? And it's likely to keep going in that direction, primarily because if you think about it, who is the best candidate to sell to? It's the person who's a captive audience to the product. So imagine right now you're a vendor, is it worth it to run an ad on Google and Facebook and Instagram where people are just like kind of bothered by your ad? Or would you rather pay a little bit to do better positioning on like Amazon's homepage, or it's on the higher selection, higher tier? Because remember, when you're looking at, like, let's say you search for, I don't know, this Stanley, like this Yeti cup, right? Imagine right now you could pay Amazon a little bit, and you as a vendor have priority all the way at the top. How much would that be worth to you? Well, it turns out it's actually worth quite a bit because the conversion rates are really high. So I think this is something that Amazon is tapping into, and they're doing it very successfully. And this is all high margin revenue because all you're really doing is just doing ad placement, um, and it's not really costing you anything. You're not investing any additional infrastructure. You're not hiring additional stuff. You're not selling anything. You're basically just providing a service, and that service is like, I would guess it's probably like 98% going directly to your bottom line. So now you have AWS, which was always a positive, like, cash flow monster, but you have this ads revenue that could also be another cash flow monster as well coming for
Mhm.
Amazon. And then there's also one last thing that's that's coming for Amazon too, which is another place of growth, and that's maintaining Amazon's inventory. So if you were a seller, Amazon provides you services to basically sell your stuff. So, things around product storage, delivery, all the services that Amazon provides. I've heard complaints from some people who sell on Amazon that it's actually becoming really onerous to do it because there's just so much money that's being charged. But in terms of like shareholder, bro, y'all are making money.
Mhm.
Shareholders are going to make money off of that. So, you know.
So this was the graphic that I was kind of referring to earlier. And Chris, you said it slightly, and I want to reiterate this point: is the focus on the expansion, the warehousing, or maybe I said it, doesn't really matter. But in 2019, I think we were at like 11.5 to 12% of e-commerce basically being portion of the total sales, and it jumped up in the pandemic to 16%. And you can see it kind of tailed off a little bit, and I think it went back close to like 13%. But it's kind of getting back to that normalized line, right? Like where it was kind of coming up and it was kind of drawing this line. So the fact that you had this massive expansion in revenue in Amazon over that time period, the amount of warehouses, the amount of employees, and everything like that, where they were just putting all that money that they were getting back into the company to try to get that foothold. They really were able to get a breather in early 2022, and they were recognizing there was $6 billion of excess people that they had, or excess warehousing, and they had the ability to kind of make it a little bit more efficient. And that's one thing I'll be looking at a little bit, is the operating margin to an extent. Not the net margin, but the operating margin, to kind of see, is that going in the right direction? Are they getting that cost savings? But this is what I wanted to kind of highlight, because a lot of people might see 16% and then kind of goes back down to 14 or so percent. Now it's kind of leveled off. But this is kind of what I'm talking about. The fact that Amazon was able to continue throughout that cycle and grow, even at single digit, double digit rates, currency adjusted and everything of the like, is absolutely phenomenal. And I think we're about to continue back up onto that trend where we've normalized, right? And we're going to start growing again. And I think Amazon's going to see that. And I think that they're going to own, 20% or more of that market, because that's just what they do. The number one and number two are Amazon and Walmart.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any other thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, we can take a quick gander at their financials. Basically, this is from their Q1. If you can share my screen real
Yeah.
quick. Yeah. So this is the supplemental for Amazon. You can see here, this is their online stores, right? Which is what they're doing on a quarter per quarter basis. Some with Amazon, of course, there's a lot of seasonality. There's going to be like Q4, which is Christmas, usually jumps up, but then it kind of slows down. But you can see here their physical footprint, all the other stuff. What I want to just quickly highlight is this right here, which is their advertising services, right? So if you look at like quarter 1 of 2022,
Look at that during
right?
Christmas, man. Holy shit.
Yeah, yeah. Look at that, almost $11 billion in that, and then, yeah, it's just crazy the amount of stuff that these guys have in terms of growth. And so, what's the other again? Includes sales of various offerings such as licensing, distribution of video content, shipping services, healthcare, and co-branded credit cards. You can see they do have areas of their business that are growing pretty rapidly. Like this, is growing at 57% last quarter, almost like triple digits on the other side. AWS is still, it's slowing down. Like right here, it's at 16%, but it's still a significant amount. And there, law of big numbers tends to apply to Amazon's web services like crazy, because they're already such a large portion of the cloud business. So yeah, I mean, that 16% year over year growth is still pretty good. But you can see here, advertising is a nice double digit grower. Subscription services is still relatively is growing relatively well as well. Third party seller services, which is another like operating matrix, is another good one. So the ones that you're seeing that are like slowing down, of course, is a physical footprint stores and the online growth for, I mean, online sales. But this right here is where the money is. And what's cool is all three of these, well, actually all four of these segments, maybe even fifth segment right here, even though it's not that material, they're all growing rapidly and they're all operating cash flow like positive. So yeah, that's like one of those things that just is a very bullish thing for Amazon. I think Amazon is gonna definitely do well. And yeah, just I'm trying to see which segments. Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
are you continuing to be in the accumulation phase for Amazon, or is this one that you've already kind of got your shares? It's kind of run up, 40 some dollars since the lows, and you're kind of just sitting on what you have. And
I'm just sitting on what I have. I think there was definitely a point where there was a lot of margin of safety in getting into Amazon, especially when you had the lows earlier this year. So that's when I was picking them up. But I think there's a lot of other opportunities for undervalued companies out there right now.
Mhm.
Amazon is still a good company. It does provide a base for my portfolio, and so does Google, because I think those two are um, still haven't recovered fully since the last all-time highs, and
Yeah,
they're still
they're still
likely
down.
to they're still likely to run up a little bit more, but they're not necessarily but not necessarily as much as some of the other guys have. So I don't know. I think at this point I'm comfortable with my allocation to Amazon and Google. Both of them run about 10% of my portfolio. Yeah, I think I'm just comfortable holding them for where they
I'm
are.
smirking because while you were while I was picking up hand over fist Amazon because I thought it's a safer bet. At the same time, you were screaming at the top of your lungs with Vitaly to buy Meta,
Yeah,
and I kind of wish I had taken a little bit more of a gamble on that. But I believed in Meta, right? So I don't want to say it was like, oh, it's a complete surprise to me. What I wasn't sure was how long people would be down on the meta story, like the actual metaverse, and it feels like people have kind of put that aside again because they've controlled the costs that they've kind of put into the company at the short term. So I mean they were spending like 30-40 billion dollars a year or something. That was like the run rate that they were putting into it, or something absurd like that. And they've kind of cut it back to, I don't remember what it is now. I haven't really looked at the financials too much in depth, but I don't know. I'm still a long term believer that the metaverse will be way more important than people kind of give credit for. But
yeah.
so I just wish that I had got a little bit more risky, but instead I chose the less risky option of Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, you know what it was with regards to Meta? It was this letter, it was a shareholder letter written by Brad Gertzner. And Brad Gertzner is pretty influential in Silicon Valley, and he actually highlighted to Mark Zuckerberg, like, the importance of getting fit. And a lot of people, if you really take a deep dive into Mark Zuckerberg and his past, he's always been a very focused operator. There's an interview that I highlighted a long time ago where he actually prides himself on being a very efficient, efficient leader, right, and efficient allocator of capital. And so Meta had just gone into this zone of being bloated. So these layoffs were more than justified. And so when you had someone like Brad Gerstner, who actively participated in discussions around Meta, I kind of
Right.
saw that Zuckerberg was taking correct actions at the time early on. So that's when I was just like, we really got to get into this before the rest of the market realizes what's going on. And I think the same thing's happening at Google. Google right now under Ruth Porat. I know a lot of people look to Sundar Pichai
Ruth is the
because he's the
CFO.
CEO.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Ruth, CFO of well, she's no longer the CFO. Now she's transitioned to the head of their what if department. Like
That's
basically,
right. I forgot about
yeah.
that.
Yeah, so they're side bets. They're called the other bets division. So Ruth is over there now. And what's interesting is just the way that Google right now has been supercharged in getting shit done. Their cloud AI business is just it's like bananas, Matt. I would say of all the big tech names that are worth investing in, even more than Amazon, is probably Google. Google is on another level of um, efficiency gains. Did you know that earlier today I just read this article where Google actually started laying off engineers in their Google Home division, and now they're actually going to be integrating LLMs into their home. And today was the first time in a long time where I was actually thinking about switching away from. God damn it! I don't want to say her name,
I
otherwise
know.
she's
I know.
gonna. Yeah.
The Amazon lady.
Basic. Yeah, the Amazon lady. If I call her, but basically I asked her to just turn off the lights. And dude, I don't know what she thought I was saying, but it definitely wasn't what needed to be done. I asked her to call my wife and she didn't do that right. And I'm just like, what the hell is going on with these things? Like
I don't
they,
know what it
you
is.
know,
So I'm just going to interject. Mine's over the past 6 months. Mine's been getting slower and slower too. Like I'll have to
yeah.
repeat stuff, and it used to be like the commands never changed, and it'll just like ignore me. Um,
Yeah.
and so I don't know if it's they put like a death pill when they laid off a lot of those folks on the AI side or the voice side for Amazon. I don't know.
I don't know what it
Anyway.
is, but she's not doing what I'm asking her to do. Like at least not as efficiently as she was like 6 months ago. Exactly what you're saying. 6 months ago everything was fine. Now I don't trust her anymore. Like even when I went on vacation and stuff, I don't know why, but she turned on the lights in my office just randomly, and I didn't even know until last 3 4 days it's been on. So now I got to go to my routines again and just check like what the hell happened here,
Mm.
because I didn't tell her to turn my lights on. Now the thing is like I'm a little bit leery on it now, so now I'm like, hey, maybe I should just start changing to Google Home, because everyone that I spoke to saying Google is actually much better.
I
So
mean,
I
I
don't know.
I know some people that have used Google and they've never had a problem. And I didn't like up to 6 months ago. I never really had a problem with the Amazon lady either. So like whenever I would talk about AI and robots and voice, right? Specifically, I was just like, well, I was like, Siri's a piece of shit. It really hasn't been updated. I mean, I say that, right? But
Mhm.
it really hasn't been revolutionized, right? Comparatively to what we see with the Amazon lady and Google. So it's I don't know, but now with what's been going on with the Amazon lady, maybe I've been hyping it too much
So
up.
is it so I'm glad that you mentioned. So it's not just me. It,
No,
it is other people. Okay. All
and I'm
right.
like,
So
is my
interesting.
device old? I'm like, the device is only they
A
gave me
couple of
the
years.
yeah
Yeah.
they gave me this. I moved in here October 2020, and they gave it to me for free with the apartment. Um,
Yeah.
it's because I have the fancy switches and God knows what else. So
Yeah.
sometimes it'll
Yeah.
work like a snap, and then other times it'll like act like it doesn't hear me. So
Yeah, I have Alexa devices all over my home, man. Like I actually did all the lighting, everything myself. So I know that I did everything right, and everything was working just fine. It's just literally over the last 6 months, this thing has been, and it's, and I, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like Amazon may be skimping on um some of the things that make its products like run well. I actually bought all my devices like that control stuff during like Prime Day, because they were just fucking, the deal was just too good to pass off. But yeah, I guess everyone is, what is it, beep beep?
beep beep.
Okay. Yeah. Not listening to commands. Yeah. Maybe I need to like do a factory reset or
Yeah,
something
maybe
on her.
let's both do it and let's see. Thanks for
Yeah.
my. I didn't think about that until you just said it. So I'll end on this. So a lot of people, I don't know anything about this Tell. I think it's Tell. Maybe I think you did actually
Tellurian.
tell me. Yeah, Tellurian.
Okay.
I think you did tell me about that, and people have been asking about it the entire night. We don't have to. It could be a completely different segment. We've already been going
Yeah.
for 47
I'll
minutes.
I'll
So
I'll do a very quick breakdown. I
okay.
haven't checked up on Tellurian in quite some time, but Tellurian is a very, very speculative play on liquefied natural gas, um, being developed in lake, like near Lake Charles, Louisiana, where they actually are building a liquefaction facility to um, take natural gas that they actually, believe it or not, they actually bought acreage and do have a drilling portion that they can take and sell overseas. Sharif Suki, of course, is the CEO for it. So after he was basically unceremoniously pushed out of um, Cheniere, he founded Tellurian. Tellurian's been losing money hand over fist. Their biggest challenge right now is getting the bank financing to get the project running. Because right now, LNG terminals, they're not cheap, man. They're in the multi-billion, like I think 10 to 20 billion dollar range. Bechtel, who's their main contractor, has already started doing the work, so they haven't got 100% go ahead yet. They could be a multi-bagger, like 100x,
Okay.
but it's very, very speculative. Now, there is a way to play into this while still generating some money, and it's less risky, but it's still risky. Is if you want to look up, go to Google, type in TELZ.
Is this a partnership?
So to tells TELZ is actually something called a baby bond. I don't know if you ever heard of that
Oh,
before.
I have heard of
Yeah.
baby bonds, but I've never really explored them.
Yeah, so Tellurian has some baby bonds in this, where Tellurian has 8.25 senior notes due in 2028. So you get priority over equity holders. right? Which is good. The base case for this is about, I mean, the base price is 25. So you get an 8% you get an 8% coupon
On
uh,
25.
on 25. So, if you think about it, you're getting like a little bit right now, you're going to get some capital appreciation if things go well. But then you'll also be collecting interest while you're waiting. The problem is, the company is very, very speculative, which means that the risk on even their bonds is very speculative. Because I'm sure that
Mhm,
there's some senior lenders that are probably ahead of this thing as well, because this is unsecured debt. So there's probably secured debt holders that are given more priority over this. So even this is a little bit risky, but this is less riskier than the stock itself. The
mhm.
stock is the riskiest one because equity, usually in a bankruptcy scenario, like equity holders will get wiped out
You get
first.
this
They'll be
first.
the
Yeah.
first ones. They'll be the first one to get diluted first if there's a secondary offering. So it's definitely not something that, like, if you do want to like invest in Tellurian, it's like it's like the most speculative thing that you could do. So it should be
Hey
nothing
man,
more than
you and I both thought that. Well, I always kind of knew that Sabine Pass was going to come online. I didn't think it was going to go belly up. I knew they might have had to go through a restructuring. Whether or not that
Mhm.
might have gone done that for the stock, I guess is a different story. But while we're
Yeah.
talking about it, I want to give people some numbers. So I did some quick notes behind the scenes. So the 8.25, I guess, is it quarterly or annually
I
note
think
that
it's
you get paid?
semi-annually.
So
Semi-annually.
semi-annually, so every 6 months, that's equivalent to like an 11.5% on 18 bucks. So if you were to buy this on the open market, you'd be getting 11%. Now, when they were to have to pay this back, this principal, so you were to buy this at 18 and they were to pay you back the $25 principal, that'd be about a 37% return. And so while you're waiting, you're getting an 11-ish percent. Um, Depending on if you were to buy today, right? Of course, it changes if it goes up or down. But also, within a year or two, you were able to, well, I guess more than that, probably closer to 4 years from now, you'd get a 37% uplift when they pay back your principal. Keep that in mind, though. The potential, like you had said, Chris, is that this becomes another LNG, right? Or Cheniere Energy, which
Yeah.
Cheniere is trading at, I don't even know, probably 50 to $100 billion. I don't know.
We can check. We can check.
Oh,
But I think,
38. Yeah.
yeah. So this is just one of those things that, like, it's very risky, very risky. I'd say that there's probably some other, if you really want to play the LNG game, like LNG export game, there's a few out there, that yeah, there's a few out there that you can get done. I would say, if you did want to deal with that, the best way to deal with it is probably finding an existing MLP or energy company that is also focused on creating a natural gas terminal pipeline as a secondary asset for themselves, and you could go from there. Like, an example is, I think ET has one. Let me just see. ET LNG partnership. I like I said, I haven't checked up on the sector in a while, but it's definitely worth looking into. Maybe I'll look at that. Energy. Hold on one second. Yeah, yeah. There's you really have to like dig deep and find them, but they're out there. They're out there. ET is God damn it,
Is this the one?
Energy Transfer Partners. I think. Yeah, Energy Transfer.
Energy Transfer LP is developing a large scale LNG in Lake Charles, um,
Yeah.
near Calcasieu Ship Channel. Project
Hmm.
will convert Energy Transfer's existing Lake Charles LNG imports and regasification to an export facility.
Yeah. Yeah.
These things print money, man.
Yeah, it's just a matter of getting project financing out of the way. That's like the hardest part. So you really have to like make sure that you have some really good long-term fixed contracts that you've set up with like supply from buyers in Asia, and then use that to leverage yourself a good bank or syndicated facility so that you can actually build this goddamn thing. And I told you these things are not cheap. They're like 10, $20 billion to like build
Billions.
this entire thing. So it's one of those things that just, and now I think there's actually quite a few companies that are trying to do LNG also right now. So yeah.
Hmm.
Lake Charles has Cameroon LNG. That's right. Venture Global LNG, plenty of room for a third. Yeah, you know what it is though. I looked at it. SG. Neither of those are public, so we don't really have access to them. You know,
Yeah.
that's the problem. I would love to invest in both. The Venture Global LNG is probably the one that I would love to invest in, but they're not. I don't know if they have like if there's a backdoor way to invest in them. Maybe they have like a partnership with someone who is publicly
Yeah,
traded.
maybe they
But
are part of Blackstone or something like that. I don't know.
yeah, I mean, look, the private equity guys, they make the money. Like they see these things, they can ring up financing from all sorts of the planet, and then put it into these things, and yeah, they could do very well.
Well, they're the ones that get
But
the private placement, right? They're like, we'll give you a
yeah,
$10 billion loan, but we also want 15% of the company.
yeah,
And so then,
yeah,
when the company ever goes public, then they're taking that public with that 15% position that there's now
yeah,
there. And that's why some of those companies do it. And if they
yeah,
don't, then they, because it's a bond, they get $10 billion worth of a bond and they own whatever sort of assets or buildings or
yeah,
whatever that those people are renting or not renting,
yeah.
financing. So
Yeah, they always provide the philo financing, first in last, was it first in last out or last in first out kind of financing, where they provide the financing, but it's all secured by the assets. So basically, you're worked for Kiwi during pre-construction on Cal
Kakashu.
Cashew
Yeah, Kakashu.
Calcasieu Pass. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to talk to someone who's got experience with Next Decade, because that's the company that I was actually looking into. They've got instead of Tellurian, I'm actually more confident in them. Next Decade.
Is Next Decade the one that you had sent me in DM? The one that kind of,
Uh, Let me see. Maybe I was asked. I sent it to a bunch of people, so I don't remember.
if it's LNG specific, you had mentioned something about some company that's able to like establish almost like a floating LNG
No, 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 no. That was
temporary.
that was a, that was another one. So that was
I don't want to
hold
let the
on.
cat out of the bag. It's your stock. So
No, 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 no. It's what was damn it, the company. I think it was called EE, which is Excelsior Accelerate Energy. That's the one I sent you to take a look at. But basically, let me show you guys what Accelerate does. Share screen. Okay. Do you see this right here on my screen? So, Accelerate Energy, what they essentially do is they provide floating regasification ships to localities around the world. So, if you look at, let me just bring this up. Sorry. And they just went public not too long ago. So I think a lot of potential is being kind of hidden a little bit by them. But let me just FLNG floating. Hold on. Uh, Floating regasification.
he said he works nights. No telling what he sent you. It's true. Sometimes
Yeah.
he sends me the wrong link.
So this right here is what you would call a hold on. So this company primarily provides ships like this that are floating regasification facilities. Now, this was really important because the rates that they were able to actually get from the Europeans was really high. So basically, what happened was when Russia invaded, they had literally cut off all the pipelined gas from from Russia into Europe. The thing is, now you had all these ships that were willing to embark and drop off LNG into Europe. But how are you gonna like reliquefy it? Because I mean, from go let it go from liquid to gas and import it into the grid in Europe. Well, you needed ships like this to do the work, and so they own about 13 of these ships, and they've been around worldwide. So there's like a bunch of like countries where they don't have the money to do the actual like the regasification. So these guys usually provide for those services. So like Bangladesh had a whole bunch of them at one point, you know. Then there was like some in like the smaller countries in like Singapore. Um, but the most curious one, and I think the day rates that they got was here in in Europe, you know. So it's a very interesting business. I haven't looked at it as much since, because LNG kind of dropped off a little
Yeah,
bit,
a lot.
the pricing on it. But if you let me just go through their presentation to show you guys.
Yeah, I'd be curious.
So
Is
right,
this the 1Q or 2Q?
this is the first Q1.
Either way, it'll
So
definitely show the drop off.
yeah, yeah. So this was the most interesting thing. So from a net income perspective, their net income is about 30 million a year. Their market cap's not that high. They completed a purchase, so they're adding ships right now to their fleet. My only question is how much further is their demand going to be in the future? Because a lot of the Europeans they're building regasification facilities on continents. So in the future, the thing may not be there. So right now they've got 530 million in cash. Debt facilities are here. Uh, we'd have to just look up what their EBITDA and everything else is. But yeah, it's definitely a company worth looking at. I definitely have to do more research on it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'd say when things normalize, right? And when like I'd say this is something to check back in on, right? I don't think it's a bad idea. I think the what scared me 6 months to a year ago when you sent it to me is I think everything was kind of at hysteria. And I felt like that things were kind of getting to that point where I was like, it can't go much higher. People were starting to say gas was going to go to like, I don't know, $500 an MCF in Europe and stuff like that. And I was like, there's no way. I mean, and then people were also talking about, the day rates for some of these ships and stuff like that. I was like, this just seems unsustainable. And so that's why I initially stood down. But I think that if it stabilizes and they're able to get some prices for some ships at very good prices as things kind of continue to go, it looks like they're making money. So if they're able to continue to get some ships at a relatively good price, I don't see LNG going away. And in fact, I see other countries like Colombia and many other countries trying to get in on the margin as well, because Colombia has a low cost source as well, and they have a lot of if they continue to develop, and right now they need to import, but if they develop the resources that they have in Colombia, they could easily be an exporter as well, and they could be getting that margin just like we do from Japan, Europe, and right now it's a sweet margin. I think Japan's still getting 10 or $11 at MCF. It might have gone back up, but you think about it, we're buying it for $2, 250 to ship it and get it like through that. It's probably $5. So the margin that they're getting is $5 in MCF. And we have a huge amount, hundreds of years of supplies worth, that we have proven, not even fully discovered yet. I'm sure we got way more.
yeah,
Anyway.
yeah. Yeah, it's a very interesting business, like shipping. Shipping's depending on which sector. I mean, depending on your timing, it could be something that's super lucrative, but it's a lot of timing dependent things. So here's a very interesting question. Maybe this is where we'll stop after this question. Don't know if you guys know about LK 99. Yes, I do know about it. I do know that it was supposedly repeated twice, so it's not completely false. But I don't know. It's not really peer reviewed. If it is, if this thing is real, Matt, I'm telling you, the world just changed, and we didn't really know about it. Do you know about
Like just
LK99?
I was watching a little bit about it on Dumb Money. Was that yesterday,
Mm,
this morning? I don't remember, but I saw Dumb Money live, and I watched about 5-10 minutes, and they were going on about it. And I typed it in on Google because they weren't saying what company or anything. I was like, "What's LK9?" It looks like a conglomerate of universities. I guess I don't know if that's true, but then I
mhm.
stopped. I had to go to the office, so unfortunately, I
Yes.
didn't get to dive deeper
Yeah.
into it.
So supposedly there's a breakthrough that happened in South Korea where they created a a molecule that basically, or was it a molecule or an element? I don't know. Basically, it is a superconductor, but unlike other superconductors that require a high pressure environment or a a really cool environment because of how how resistance works, you get something called a mesmer effect, where basically, when you try to transfer electricity, from one, like basically a conductor, there's going to be resistance. Well, the colder you make it, the easier it is for electricity to pass through it. And at some points, you can have something called a mesmer effect where things actually kind of float, which is really cool. It could really revolutionize a lot of industries because right now, just think about like electronics, how they heat up, but that's because there's electricity that's constantly passing back and forth, back and forth. Imagine right now in room temperature, there's no heating involved. There's nothing that gets heated. So it's one of those things that could really revolutionize like a lot of industries. I just don't know 100% if it's 100% confirmed yet. And yeah, and because of that, I'm not sure that there's a way to actually invest in it profitably. I know some people, they look up, okay, let me just look up some name of a company that's supercomputer in it and basically throw money at it, which is why this company, American Superconductor, ran up maybe. But
There,
yeah,
there
I
was another one that one of the gentlemen from Dumb Money was looking at. It was like a small Texan semiconductor sort of company, and I'm curious if it was centered around this. This wasn't the today. This was either last week or 2 weeks ago that I had seen them talking about it, and I kind of dismissed it. But they were talking about how I think because everybody's trying to bring semiconductors and stuff like that onto shore, and I know this is different, right? We're talking about superconductors, but I think it was related more towards the semiconductors. So anyway, might be related. Maybe it's not related at all, but I'll go back and double check. But interesting story.
yeah. Yeah, right now every scientist on the planet is trying to validate the story by running their own experiments. Um, it's a like I said, it's a very interesting thing. Let me just show this on the screen.
Yeah.
The synthesis, the greatest achievement of this thing, believe it or not, is not necessarily the conductor, but the synthesis of it is like super simple to make. It's not hard. Like that's the thing. Most of these things, like these are like new age materials. They're super hard to do. Like even regular superconductors, they're very hard to manufacture. This is like supposedly you can make this shit with like very basic no, not a basic chemistry shot. That's probably not the right word that I would use.
But it's as
But
simple. I know what you're kind of referring to, right?
yeah.
Remember in physics class or electromagnetism, you tied a copper wire around a battery, and next thing you know, everything's spinning. Like it's
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
something simple like that, where you just do a little bit of
Yeah.
stuff that shows the flux within an element, and next thing you know, it's fucking floating. So
There was one Twitter user who actually got onto Twitch and actually like live streamed, I think, the synthesis portion of it. I have to find out what it is, but basically it's something that some of them were actually able to synthesize a structure confirmed by X-ray diffraction, reported near zero resistance below 110 Kelvin, but without a sudden drop off, observed an artifact in measure resistance, no diamag. So some people are saying it works, but I don't know. I don't know. This is just one of those things that just
what do you think is more important of a breakthrough, this or the millionth of a second that we were actually able to achieve fusion in California?
Probably this, only because this is probably more near term. But I,
near term?
you know,
More impact
I
today as opposed to trialing for another 5-10 years before we get a one
fusion,
thousandth of a second of infusion.
dude. Fusion is hard, man. Fusion is very, very hard. Like, think of ad fusion is just really, really fucking hard. This right here seems like a very easy thing that could actually work. Um, and it's something that everyone's going to be trying to replicate in the next 60, well, probably in the next 2 weeks, because if it doesn't work, it'll be confirmed and debunked very quickly. And if it does, if it doesn't work, I mean, if it doesn't work, it'll be debunked very quickly. And if it does work, then it's gonna like just it's gonna go fucking gangbusters everywhere. Because just the way that things are that our world works, everything works on on semiconductors. So if you can get stuff like this and be a thing that could replace it, it'd be awesome. You know.
Hmm.
So yeah.
So you're shorting Texas Instruments? Is that what you're saying?
No, no, no. I'm not even close to that. By the way, so someone asking about the debt ceiling. Maybe not debt ceiling, the drop in the US's credit rating. Maybe we'll save that for tomorrow. I think today
Yeah,
might be a little too much. We covered a lot of stuff today.
we did, but it was a good
So
conversation. Hopefully, wasn't too strenuous on you. I wanted to ask a very important question before we sign off. How was your vacation, man?
it was good. It was good. I got to see what retirement life for people looks like. I think a lot of the place that we stayed was, it was our 5-year anniversary. So my wife, splurged a little bit and we got like a really nice place. Like the view was just out of this world. But I realized like being there, they were like, you had to have some money to be there. And yeah, it's just, I don't know. I didn't feel, to be honest, I didn't feel like I belonged there. I know that sounds stupid, but I grew up poor. So when you grow up poor, like things like this are not exactly on your list of places to be. So you always have this feeling of uncomfortability when you're there. I mean, eventually it goes away. I was like, nah, bro. After like little while, it was like, okay, yeah, I belong here. But when I first got there, it was like, man, this is like really fancy, you
Yeah.
know. So
Were you okay disclosing what resort it was, or
yeah, it's called the Sun Palace in
okay.
Cancun. They're also affiliated. There was another one that. So I'll tell you guys a funny story before we head out. So one of the things that Mexico and especially Cancun is known for is the fucking timeshares. Like the minute you get off the plane, they try to sell you
This is
timeshares.
great. This is gonna be great.
You know. So we go to this place and
God damn it, Chris.
like
You would.
as we're checking in, these guys are like, hey, listen,
You would.
if you if you get this timeshare, like if you go to this presentation, we will give you this like massage credit and like this excursion trip all on us. And I'm like, man, I'm trying to save some money. Why not? So, my wife is like, no, let's not do it. Like, we'll just pay out of pocket. I'm like, nah, fuck that. A deal is a deal. So me and her go, and
Massages are expensive at some of those resorts. Real
yeah.
expensive.
So the next day, my wife is like, make sure you say no. And I'm like, okay, I will. Don't worry about it. Like, I know what I'm doing. She's like really grilling me. And so we go there and the guy, like this lady just shows us around. And let me tell you, the place is freaking beautiful. Like the water is just clear as it's awesome. Like, so we get there and then the sweet talking starts, right? And it's like, hey, listen, we can do this for you. We can do that for you. And my wife, who was supposed to be the rock, bends like, and she's like, hey, maybe we should get this timeshare. And I'm like,
God.
no, you did not just do that. You like, come on, man. So I was like, all right, how am I gonna make this, thing go away? Because they really they put the sales pitch on you hard, like really hard. And so I was just like telling
You
him,
shut it down.
look, man. Well, I didn't shut it down. What I said that they were like, oh, this is how much money you'll save if you do this. I'm like, but what if I just took that same money and put it in the market and get these returns, right? And
So
the guy's like,
you pulled a full Chris Patel. You would have.
so I fucking pulled out the reverse Uno card and I was like, man, It's like, let me tell you about these debit spreads that I got going on and how much money you can make on that. And the guy, the
Mm.
guy's looking at me like, ah, shit, this dude is trying to sell me a timeshare in Chris's Patreon. I didn't go that far. I didn't go that far.
That's
But I
freaking
thought about it.
great.
I was like, maybe while he's pitching me this timeshare, I could pitch him the Patreon.
Yeah, you
It's like
should.
it,
You should.
it's like, listen, man, it's an investment. Think like because the way that they come at you with these timeshares, like think of it as an investment
Think about
in
how
your
many people I
future.
could help if you get me retired from my 9 to 5 job. That's what
Yeah.
you, but I'm curious. Are you and the missus type of couple that goes away once a year, or is it like you guys seem like you work really hard, so I would be surprised if you
Nah, we
take
we
the
go
time.
once. We I think we do like there's an annual trip that we do to Vegas every
Oh,
year
nice.
where we fly to Vegas, we'll stay a day in Vegas, and then we'll drive. We'll rent a car and then go to like all the places around the Southwest. The Southwest, like I love just driving to the
Mm,
Southwest,
I
like
love
different
driving.
parts of
Yeah,
it.
it's fun. Wait,
So it's
real
like
question: have you been to Area 51?
no, have not been to
I
Area
want to do that.
51
I
yet.
want to do that.
Yeah, I've been to Yellow. What do you call it? To Arizona, to like Sedona. We went through. We went through that entire area. Then we went to the Grand Canyon. We went to last time we went. We went to Zion National Park. I think this year we may end up doing Utah again.
Mm,
But yeah, so it's like an annual trip for us. We usually go around October, November. But then other than that, we have like sporadic trips that we'll try to take. We're probably going to end up going like Universal and like Disney in September, because she's a really big Harry Potter fan. So if you tell her like, hey, every month we're going to Universal, she'd be like, sure, let's do it. Me, I'm more like, hey, let's go every like few years.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, but overall, we travel, but not a lot. There's definitely like 1 to 2 trips a year that are more international focused. Um, we were originally thinking about doing Italy or Japan earlier
Mm.
this year, but we just got so many things going on. We might end up having to go to India for a wedding. Well, we are going to have to go to India for a wedding next
Yeah, there's
February.
there's
So
no we may when it comes to Indian
yeah,
weddings. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So
But
it
I
is
know
what it
exactly
is.
how you feel. When I went to Cabo, so I'm okay. I do the all inclusive thing, right? I love that. But like not
Yeah,
normally do I go like the top. You know what I mean? Like that
yeah.
I when I went to Cabo, it was like not only do you just need to buy the apparently to the $750 a night, to be there, uh, but you also needed to buy the next wave up, and they didn't look at you unless you bought the $200 a day extra package or whatever.
Hmm.
And so like I'm walking around looking like I'm scum. I'm like, I do not belong here. Like these people,
Hmm.
like I was in like the normal by the pool sort of chairs trying to get drinks. I had to wave around a $10 bill to get anybody's attention. And they're all hanging out at the cabanas, like because those are the real big, players, I guess. So
Yeah.
anyway, I know how you felt. I was like, I'm so out of place here.
Yeah. So I'm more like, hey, let's go to like a cheap place and we could just freaking like have a great time. I don't need to be in like the most fanciest place. But then
Yeah.
again, it was also nice that we had a hot tub in the room. I
Oh.
used it like twice. It was freaking awesome. You know. The view that we had was just amazing. It was like ocean view. But I will say, like, the best part about the whole trip was just waking up with my wife every morning and just having like breakfast delivered to our room and literally just sitting there having like a nice breakfast. I usually play some music on the side and
Mhm.
it was a nice like wake up. So like me and the wife right now, because of our schedules and how we work, we don't necessarily get to eat breakfast together sometimes, and so it's kind of one of those things that when you're on vacation, you're able to do. I remember this was like the first vacation. I didn't even try to bring my laptop or anything. I said, "No, I'm just
That's good.
leaving. I'm leaving everything at home. I'm just gonna just work. I'm just gonna focus on the vacation." So that's what we did. We ended up going and doing some excursions. I don't know if you've ever been to something called a cenote before. You
I've
know what that is?
seen a lot of them, and my buddy SG, he's been to a few. Yeah, he's got some down low on that, but I've never been to one.
Yeah.
I've only seen it on the internet.
Very cool. Very cool excursion. Basically, it's like underground caves that are filled with water. And so a lot of it's like like the water gets seeped down from like the jungle and the top, and it picks up calcium, and then it actually forms all these formations under the ground, and you're able to actually like navigate everything. So these underground caves are freaking awesome to go through. So that's what we did like one of the days. I wish we had stayed longer. Maybe next time that's what we'll do. We'll probably stay like another like extra couple of days. We didn't get a chance to go to Chichen Itza or to Tulum, because we were both just like, bro, if we're out there, because it was hot, like it was beyond hot.
Mm.
So we definitely came during the wrong time if we were going to do outdoorsy activity. So I figured that the cenotes would probably be a nice little, like away from the sun kind of activity. So next time we go, we'll probably go sometime like February, where things are the weather is a little bit more agreeable to our northern, stay in the air conditioning all day
Hmm.
sensibilities. So yeah, yeah,
I'm glad you had a good time. Yeah, I
yeah,
definitely. It's no excuse for me. It's literally like a 2 hour flight, and um, every couple months I'm just like, yeah, I'm just gonna book a flight this weekend, and I just never end up doing it.
yeah,
So anyway,
yeah, yeah. When's the next time you're going on vacation?
I'm actually going to the Smoky Mountains in 2 weeks to hang out with my
Nice,
sister, so that'll be
nice,
cool. Be able to see my nieces, nephews. I'm probably gonna bring them some trinkets from Texas, and then
nice.
I'll be in Jersey the following week. So the third week, we had some people cancel from like the 25th or like the 22nd to the 25th or something like that in August, and we were like, ah, fuck it, we met our revenue goal for the year. Like, let's just use it ourselves, right? Because
Yeah,
me and my buddy who bought it, we haven't yet used it together. He's been able to do it for like work weekends and changing out stuff, but we've never used it. Well, I've never used it personally, so it'll be nice to actually see a little bit of fruits of labor. So I'll be in Jersey that week, and then I do plan on my buddy SG is going to Asia. I don't know if I'll be making that, but I do think I want to go down to Tulum. He went down to Tulum and he told me about it. And I went to Dominican in 21, Jamaica in 2021, and I lived in Trinidad. So I've been a lot of the Caribbean. So I went to Grenada, Antigua, Barbados, Grenada. There's a few other islands I want to go see, but I'd also like to start diving into Central and South America, to be honest with you. Um,
hmm.
so I do want to plan something international this year, but I just don't know if it's in the cards. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah. All right, man. Well, I'll talk
Cool.
to you later. All
All right,
right,
brother.
this
Much
was a
appreciated
pleasure.
as always. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
All right, bro. Have a
Thank
good
you all.
one. Later.
Cheers, bro.